I'm sure glad to be here with you all, sharing this first Sunday of 2022 with the good people of the UU Society of Geneva. So thank you for the invitation. So I want to try something this morning, and I'm going to ask you all to go along with me in a moment. But this is something that, I guess we'll find out if this is going to work on Zoom or not. But I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to ask you to join with me in singing the words of the prophetic philosopher and longtime Unitarian Universalist Pete Seeger, right? The reading that we just had. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. So those are the words. And I know we're all in our own little squares and in our own rooms of whatever form and size they are. It's snowy. There's other noises that may be happening. My radiator's hissing over here because it's cold where I am. So at any rate, we're not going to unmute microphones, although you're going to have to listen to me sing, which is, could be, we'll see how that goes. But what I'm going to do is that a couple of times during the sermon, I'm going to kind of reach out to you and I'm going to start singing, and I want you to join me and sing wherever you are, as loud as you want to, as quiet as you want to. So let's give that a practice. All right. And if you don't know the tune, I'm going to guess you'll catch on pretty quick, but I have a feeling probably most folks in here know it. All right. So here's how it's going to go. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. Now, usually when I preach this sermon, it's not being recorded, it with my solo voice being the only voice that's going to be heard for that. So we'll see how posterity, the future is kind to me or not when it comes to my solo singing here with no accompaniment. So New Year's, it's always been a bit of a mixed bag for me as far as holidays go. When I was in grade school, which is now a very long time ago, it was the one night a year we got to stay up past our bedtimes. And my siblings and I, we would play games, we'd eat popcorn, maybe watch a movie if there was something good on one of the 3 or 4 channels we got back in the old days. With a minute left, we would count down, and at midnight, we'd go out on the front porch and we'd bang pots and pans together, yelling, "Happy New Year!" It was a fun time. It was a family time. And then by the time I was in high school, we would sometimes watch the ball drop on Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve. But at that point, there was nothing really that special about staying up late. And then I moved to New York City for college. And I lived there up until, now it's about 9 years ago. And New York City, what a cool place to live, especially since you're already there for New Year's Eve, right? No, not so much. In the almost 25 years I lived in New York City, I never once, not once, ever went to see the ball drop in person. Never. When you have to navigate the hordes of tourists and drunks with all the noisemakers that, most New Yorkers hate New Year's Eve, and especially hate it in Times Square. And so without the external traditions, like all of those, to mark this holiday as special for me over the years, I guess I've thought more of the smaller internal traditions. Looking back over the year that's ending, thinking about what I'm grateful for and what I want to change in the coming year. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. So it seems to be a time to make lists. Doesn't take very long, and watching something on TV, reading it, there's always a list of the top 10 best movies, right? The top 7 biggest scandals, 5 ways to lose that weight that you've gained over the pandemic, 10 best KN95 masks, right? Lists. And then there's the personal list that I've created for 2022 Projects like winterizing the garage and organizing the basement. And then there's the big lifestyle lists, right? Throw out all the junk food in the house, eat healthier, exercise 5 times a week, stop procrastinating, do more in the fight to fight racial injustice and white privilege in myself and communities. I mean, these lists aren't bad in and of themselves. For many people, making lists is the best way to organize and prioritize. And I love making lists. I make lists on my phone, I make them on my iPad, I make lists in notebooks and on slips of paper, and then usually I misplace them or I completely forget to even look at them. And still I make them. And more often than not, they actually do help me get done what I need to get done. And now what the lists don't do, at least for me, is lists don't help me actually change. This is where the tradition of making New Year's resolutions has always fallen short for me. New Year's resolutions are a sort of list, a list of promises to do something to improve oneself or to stop doing something in order to improve oneself. And this idea is a pretty good custom, actually. It's just that I've never found that making resolutions necessarily leads to my keeping them. According to a Wall Street Journal article several years ago now, about 88% of New Year's resolutions are not kept. Neuroscientists suggest that the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain largely responsible for willpower, is also responsible for a myriad of other important tasks. And so it can get overloaded just like any other system of the body. So asking it, to eat healthy, lose weight, quit smoking, think positive, meditate more, become more organized, volunteer, watch less television, be more spiritual, get out of debt, and learn a new language, right? That's asking for brain freeze. And it's likely to get you to be in with that 88%. Changing old habits and taking on new ones takes time. It takes intention, and it takes practice. Studies show that lasting change is more likely to come when you take on one thing at a time and find social support. So the idea of making New Year's resolutions that actually lead to change, at least the change that I'm looking for in my life, that might be possible if I stop thinking about resolutions as a list, but instead as a year-long project. And I've also been wondering if I would be more successful in my desire for change if I also change the focus from being me-centered to being others-centered. To quote Brittany Cooper, who tweets as @ProfessorCrunk on Twitter, to quote her, what would it mean to make a list of resolutions that were less about self-improvement and more about fighting for justice? So besides scientific research, I've also got the UU principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth as a guidepost. In my life, lasting change has always taken spiritual growth. As a Unitarian Universalist, I'm rooted in covenantal community. And, often we work best when we work with others. So instead of rushing to get through my list of resolutions in the next few weeks, which I am unlikely to be successful in anyway, I'm thinking that I might try getting out a big calendar and spread out my transformation. And maybe I'm going to get some buddies to help me. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. So Charles M. Blow wrote a few years ago in a New York Times op-ed column. This was titled Greeting the New Year. And in his column, he wrote that this is his favorite time of year because he connects with, as he called it, the idea of marking endings and beginnings, the ideas of commemoration and anticipation. endings and beginnings. A lot of times, a lot of people, I think of spring as the season that exemplifies the concept of new beginnings, at least in the northern hemisphere, right? And yet, it's in the dead of winter, a little over a week after the winter solstice, that those of us who mark time with the Gregorian calendar will celebrate the start of a new year. We just did this, right, yesterday. And I've been wondering why we celebrate New Year's at the start of January. And so I did a little cursory reading and learned that the January 1st, which would be in a bigger sense of time, the 8th day of Jesus's life, which marked the feast of the circumcision of Christ. Again, back when calendars were being considered, the one that we're looking at now, I'm not a church historian, so I am not clear why Pope Gregory decided that this particular feast should mark the start of a new year. But regardless of how or why the calendar we use was created and who and what political forces were involved, for us, January 1st marks the start of a new year. So what does it mean for us to mark new beginnings at the time of the longest nights? And I believe it has much to do with the place of hope and faith within the cycle of life. It's one thing to see the green shoots of the crocus with confidence as they burst forth. It's one thing to see them proclaim the earth is being reborn, right? The new year is here, life. It's another thing entirely to stand in the midst of the shortest days and the longest nights and proclaim that we're from right here, in the very midst of winter, the new year is born. There's something very powerful in this. And I would venture to guess that for many of us, new beginnings started just like that. And it was at our lowest point. At our bottom, we cried out, yes, I am here. Things are about as tough as they could be, about as tough as I could imagine them, but this is where I am. I can't wait for things to get better, to change. My new life must start now from the depths of this winter where I witness no sign of spring. The new year starts now. And you know what? That takes hope and faith. Faith. Faith has been defined as that which allows you to accept that which you cannot understand. Here at the start of January, in the enveloping night and the cold, hope and faith give us courage and imagination to acknowledge what is passing and past and look to something new we can't even imagine yet. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. The blessing of a new year. To bless is to bestow good upon. What and who do you ask blessings for as we start 2022? What do you wish to be made new in this time of incubation? Let's just take a moment in silence and think about it. And then if you would like to, I think if the chat is on, is the chat still on? Okay. So if you would like, you can speak a name just into your computer here on mute. But if you'd also like to type a name or a word into this sacred space together, it will be blessed. We bless within this sacred space the names, the concepts, the ideas that are being written as part of community. May you be blessed in not doing everything at once, remembering there is a season a time for every purpose. May you be blessed in finding companions to join you along the way. Change seems to happen most effectively when it's done slowly and with buddies. May you be blessed as you think back to what has been and embody hope and faith as you imagine forward. May you be blessed living into what is to be. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Amen, and blessed be. So today's benediction comes from the Reverend Nadia Boltz-Weber. There is no resolution that, if kept, will make you more worthy of love. You, as your actual self and not some made-up ideal, are already worthy. Go in peace. Amen.